Welcome to this course, Using ChatGPT as a Writer's Assistant. This course is aimed at people who write novels and non-fiction books and want to explore using a tool like ChatGPT to be an assistant. I don't mean using ChatGPT to write the books for you, and I'll cover that in a moment, but this is purely as an assistant that you can use to ask questions and generate ideas and become inspired. So what is ChatGPT? Well, it's a text-based artificial intelligence tool. And what this means is that you can ask it questions, much like an online chat, say on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. But instead of talking to another person, you're talking to an AI. And that AI will give you good, useful responses back. And this makes it great for research as a writer. So first of all, I want to talk a little bit about my thoughts on AI tools for writers in general. And this is my opinion, so it doesn't necessarily reflect anyone else's opinion, but this is kind of what I think. Whenever new innovations come out, it's quite natural for people to be a bit worried about it. So with a lot of the AI-based image generation tools that have come out, it's quite rightly got graphic designers and digital artists a little worried because these AI tools are coming out with basically examples of work that are very good. They're very detailed and they look great. And they've been trained on lots and lots, or thousands, or maybe even millions of already pre-existing pieces of artwork, which is causing a bit of controversy around kind of who owns the rights to the images that have been used as part of the training data. But that's not what I'm talking about. So I'm talking specifically about writers in general. Now, do I think tools like ChatGPT could write a book? I mean, yeah, they could. Do I think it's any good? I mean, for some non-fiction stuff that I've seen people experiment with, yeah, it sounds pretty good what it's come up with. But specifically for novels, I personally am not interested in reading a novel that's been written by an AI. And the reason for that is when a person writes a book, you're getting kind of an inner view into that person's mind. So no matter what the story is, you're hopefully getting a fun, engaging story. But also it's kind of a look into that person's mind. It's like you're spending time with the writer next to you. So if you read, say, a book by Stephen King, for example, I mean, like great horror story about the clown. It's a great story in its own right, but it also, because of the strong character voice in the book, it also feels like you're with Stephen King and he's telling you that story. I don't personally think AI can replace that, and I certainly have no intention of or desire to read books written by an AI tool. But I do think AI tools like ChatGPT are very useful and they work well as an assistant to a writer. Something that you can ask questions to, you can do research, you can brainstorm and throw around ideas for a story. In that regard, ChatGPT is absolutely fantastic. And I'm going to show you some simple examples of how I've used ChatGPT for some of my work. I thought I'd just start with that by saying, I don't think tools like ChatGPT should be used for writing novels. I just don't. I think it has to be done the old-fashioned way, which is bum in seat, hands on keyboard, and then the story comes out of the human. Because an AI, it may come up with an interesting action scene, for example, but it's not really, I don't think, going to be able to capture that kind of emotional nuance that a human writer or a skilled human writer is going to be able to give that story and the characters. But as a tool for research, I think it's very good. So a little bit about me before we proceed. So my name is Stephen Haunts. I've written many books, lots of non-fiction books in the past, but the two that I think are most relevant here are the ones I have on the screen. So whilst I've written and published a lot of non-fiction books before, both through traditional and self-published routes, I've now dipped my toes into the wonderful world of writing fiction. So my first novel is called Diary of a Martian. It's a middle grade science fiction adventure, so it's kind of aimed at the kind of 9 to 12-year-old reading group, but I've tried to make it fun and engaging that adults could actually enjoy it as well. Feel free to check it out if you like sci-fi stories. And I've also written another book called On Writing Your First Novel, The Journey of a Wannabe Novelist. And I wrote this book as kind of a behind the scenes documentary, I guess, of the writing of Diary of a Martian. So it's about what it's like to write your first novel. And I use Diary of a Martian as my example throughout the book, and I'll talk about how I came up with the idea, how I planned the book, and how I went through the writing process, the editing process, cover design, interior design or formatting of the book. So it really is like one of those behind the scenes featurettes that you get on a Blu-ray disc for a film. And my purpose with that book is I hope it will inspire other writers when they're writing their first book. So with that, let's now go into ChatGPT and see how we can use it as a capable assistant to the writer. So here you can see the main screen for ChatGPT. Here you can see the main window for ChatGPT. To access it, you just open a new browser and go to the URL chat.openai.com. If it's the first time you've used ChatGPT, you will be asked to create an account, so I am logged in here. Something worth noting that at the time of recording, there is a way you can upgrade ChatGPT for $20 a month. And what this will do is it will give you fast response times and give you access to basically servers when it's in high demand. Because ChatGPT has been very popular, sometimes it can be a bit hard to access the site. Currently, the upgrade is, at the time of recording, is only available in the US. Unfortunately for me, because I'm in the UK, I can't actually take advantage of this upgrade plan. But if you are in the US, then currently it costs $20 a month. So if you plan on using ChatGPT as a writing assistant fairly often, it might be a worthy upgrade to do. So the way ChatGPT works is very straightforward. We have a little chat window down the bottom here. You type into that text box, hit return, and then ChatGPT will respond. So what I'm going to look at first is how to use ChatGPT as a fancy thesaurus, because you can actually do some pretty cool things with it where you can, if you're stuck on a word or a word usage, you can get ChatGPT just to help you along. So for example, say you have a line in a story and you think it's a fairly good line, but you want to see if ChatGPT can help you come up with something better. So this is the query I'm going to ask. I have a line in a story, and then the rain poured down, striking the ground with force. So what I'm asking ChatGPT is, can you write this in a more provocative and emotive way? I want a sense of dread as the rain falls. So let's see what ChatGPT comes up with. It can sometimes take a few moments just because the servers can be in high demand. This is why, if you have the ability to pay for the upgrade, it's probably worth it. Okay, so here's ChatGPT's suggestion. The skies unleashed their wrath upon the earth as the rain came crashing down, each droplet pounding the ground with unrelenting force, stirring a primal fear within those who dared to bear witness. That's pretty cool. Let's ask it for another one. Can you try another version? So as the droplets of rain fell, a sense of foreboding washed over them. But soon the heavens opened up, unleashing a deluge of water that pounded the earth with relentless fury, each drop like a drumbeat heralding an impending doom. And that's pretty cool, I think. So we're not using ChatGPT to write your whole story, but sometimes if you have a line and you know it can do better, but sometimes your brain just isn't going to work for you. Sometimes you come up a blank on how to improve something. So ChatGPT can actually help you out in those cases. It's a bit like turning to a colleague in the office and saying, how can I improve this? Getting someone else's opinion. And ChatGPT is very good for that. So let's look at just one more example. So I need a better word than punish when talking about telling off a child in a story. So you might think that the word punish is a bit too dramatic or a bit too forceful. So you just want another suggestion. So here's some alternative words to punish when talking about telling off a child in a story. Scold, reprimand, admonish, rebuke, chide, reprove, correct, discipline, or teach a lesson. So scold, that sounds quite good. When you scold a child for talking back to you, for example. Rebuke, that's probably a bit too harsh. Chide, not so sure. Scold's quite good. Or reprimand. So that's a good example or a couple of examples of how to use ChatGPT to either suggest some words or just improve on a sentence that you've already written. Next, we'll look at an example of using ChatGPT for research questions. When you're writing a story or researching a story, it's quite common that you'd use a search engine like Google or Bing to ask questions and try and do some research. But ChatGPT can also fulfill that role for you really well. So let's do a couple of examples just to illustrate. So let's say you're writing a story that's going to be set in prehistoric times. Now, kind of how far back you go, you're not really sure. You're going to have cavemen or cave people in it. You're going to have dinosaurs. You're not sure. But one question that you might think about is, did dinosaurs and humans or cavemen ever live at the same time? So we can ask that question. It says, no, humans and dinosaurs did not exist on Earth at the same time. Dinosaurs lived on Earth during the Mesozoic era, which lasted for about 252 million years ago to 66 million years ago. The first mammals, which are a group of animals that includes humans, appeared much later in the fossil record during the Mesozoic era, but towards the end of it, around 200 million years ago. Okay, that's pretty cool. That's quite a very simple closed question, but it gave quite a good, interesting, result there. So that was a closed question. Did humans and dinosaurs exist on Earth at the same time? ChatGPT could have either gone yes or no, but it actually gave us a little bit of context, which is quite useful. Let's ask a more open question, and then we can have a play around with it. So you don't necessarily use ChatGPT just to get one result. It'll give you a result, and then you can kind of ask further probing questions. Because one of the cool benefits of ChatGPT is it remembers the conversation. It has conversational history, so you can sort of dive in and ask further questions. But ChatGPT still has the context of the conversation, which is really smart. So here's a more open question. Is there any documented evidence of aliens on Earth? Maybe you're writing a science fiction story or an alien invasion story. There is no credible documented evidence to support the existence of aliens on Earth. Fair enough. Despite numerous claims and reports of sightings and encounters with extraterrestrial beings, there is no scientifically verifiable evidence to support these claims. Many of these reports can be attributed to natural phenomena, misinterpretations, hoaxes, or misunderstandings. Okay, fair enough. The search for extraterrestrial life is an active field of scientific inquiry, and while scientists have discovered many planets that could potentially support life, there's currently no evidence of extraterrestrial life or visitation on Earth. Yeah, but what about Roswell? What happened there? Let's ask it. The Roswell incident is a famous UFO sighting that occurred in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico, USA. I guess it's given us a fair bit of extra information. I'm not going to read all of it out. I mean, you can read it off the screen yourself. It talks about a weather balloon or a top secret military balloon. So we could ask it a bit more about that. Okay, so the military balloon recovered in Roswell was part of a classified program known as Project Mogul. Ooh, that's a cool name. Which was designed to monitor the Soviet Union's nuclear weapons testing during the early years of the Cold War. Okay, that's quite interesting. And it's giving us more information. So, as you can see, you have the ability to probe and ask more questions. It's a bit like talking to an expert because obviously ChatGPT has been fed with a huge amount of training data from the internet. So you can really dig in. And this is one of the things I like about it because when you're trying to plan or research a novel, you don't always have the ability just to sit around and chat to people, whether it be other peers or other people in a writing group or whatnot. And I find that personally, I mean, I have other writers that I know, but I can't just sit around asking them questions all day. So using something like ChatGPT is a great way of just researching and actually having a conversation with something. In this case, it's an AI system, but it can be really good for stimulating the imagination. I mean, we could probe a bit further. Let's say, are there aliens at Area 51? Not quite sure how much it's going to be able to tell us, considering it's a top secret base, but we shall see. There's no credible evidence to support the claim that there are aliens at Area 51. Area 51 is a highly classified United States Air Force facility located in the Nevada desert. I mean, I wasn't actually honestly expecting it to give us an in-depth answer to that, but it is giving us quite a lot of information back, which we can then kind of delve into a bit further, which is pretty cool. Using it for research, as you can see, is great. You can ask it a question, you can ask follow-on questions, and then you can copy out this text, you can stick it into your research documents, and you can just use it as a way of building up lots of research data for a particular story. So I've done this quite a few times. So in my novel, Diary of a Martian, I asked it lots of questions about Mars and Mars missions and what it'd be like to live on Mars, atmospheric pressure and all that sort of stuff. And it just gave me loads of information back, which is pretty cool. So next I'm going to use ChatGPT to be a bit more creative and help us with coming up with names, specifically alien names in my case, because that's what I found quite useful. So in my science fiction book, I have some aliens in there, and I've always found coming up with kind of strange names to be a bit difficult because you'll try and brainstorm a load of ideas and names and you'll write them down, and I don't know whether it's just me, but I automatically just think, they're not very good. But sometimes I need someone or something, ChatGPT in this case, to just suggest something to me. So let's give it a try and see what it comes up with. Can you suggest some names for an alien species? Xandorians? Epsilonites? Zoraxians, Curians, Celestians, Novarites, Cosmians, Lyrians, Thalassans, and Aureals. They're pretty cool. So I quite like number 8, Lyrians. So can you suggest some alien names for the Lyrans? Lyra, Thylium, Orin, Silara, Xandri, Elysia, Thalas, Nilara, Valtor, and Zorin. In a few questions, we've got some pretty cool alien species names, and then for one of those alien species, we've come up with some actual names of the characters. Now, whether you use those directly or whether you use them, or you might combine some, so you could have Orin and Xandri, for example, you can combine two together. Doesn't really matter how you do it, it's just a good way of giving yourself a little mental nudge to find out some different names. But let's say you want to do something a bit more down to earth. So you want some kind of posh sounding British names for a period drama. So can you suggest some posh sounding British names for a story set in, let's say, the 1920s? Look forward to see what it comes out with here. Penelope, Algernon, Gwendolyn, Rupert, Beatrice, Montgomery, Priscilla, Reginald, Henrietta, Cedric. They're pretty cool, but can you include surnames? Penelope Fairfax, Algernon Baring Gould, Gwendolyn Frobisher, Rupert Cavendish, Beatrice Fanshawe, Montgomery Devereux, Priscilla Pemberton, Reginald Fitzwilliam, Henrietta Ashbourne, or Cedric Wycherley. I like those. Penelope Fairfax, that sounds cool. You can have a good protagonist called Penelope Fairfax. So, okay, so we've got some 1920s names. How about a made-up fictional town that they could live in? Can you suggest some names for made-up British towns? I hope none of these are rude, because in Britain we do have some town names that sound a bit rude. Okay, Chalford-on-Trent, Chesfield Green, Petherton Heath, Brambleton-on-Avon, Hartfield Vale, Beechwood Cross, Ashby Park. So there's some good names there. So it's a really good way of suggesting names, because I don't know about you, I find that quite difficult sometimes. So in the next clip, we're going to venture into a bit stranger territory by looking at the generation of alien poetry, which is something I actually did for my book. And yeah, it was quite cool. So let's have a look. So in the sequel to my Diary of a Martian novel, I have a scene where we have some aliens. And we have a bit of a comedy scene. It's a light-hearted scene where I'm trying to get the reader to really bond with the aliens. So we have one of them do a poetry recital in a strange alien language, and kind of what I'm thinking is it'll be a cross between kind of some hacking and gagging sounds like Klingons from Star Trek versus the awful Vogon poetry from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And I wanted a little bit of inspiration from ChatGPT to help with that. So let's try it now. Can you write an alien sounding poem in a strange language that is a similar style to Klingon? It needs to be quite awful, like the Vogon poetry. Ooh, log on? No. Like the Vogon poetry from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Who knows what it's going to come up with here? I'm not even going to attempt to try and read that out. I just tried the first line. Kradum Jagron Klaxor Singh. Vorpalax Anturklin. Wagathorax in Singon Frey. Ninjurix in Slay Array. It's quite good actually. Well, it's actually descended into English at one point as to Crimson Battlefield Lies. Okay, well, we didn't actually want any English bits, but I think that's quite good. Some bits it has kind of resorted to English, which is not kind of what we asked for, but there's some interesting ideas there. Can you make it more alien with no English words or phrases? So we can ask it to refine it a bit. Well, that's more like it. I can just visualise my aliens in my story reading this out now. It's a open mic poetry recital, of all things. Okay, so I'm going to click stop generating there. So it still works in a few kind of English words there. So it's not perfect, but I mean, you can take bits out as you like, and you can create something that you think is relevant to your story. Now, this is a kind of a weird niche example. It's something that's relevant that I actually did in my book. Plus, there's another thing that I did, or that I'm doing in the second Diary of a Martian book, where because it's a middle grade story, some of the kids are singing this song, and it's kind of pitched as like the latest pop song from Earth, which the adults all think is absolutely awful. You know, it's quite common as parents now. We think a lot of the music our kids listen to is pretty terrible. So I asked it to write a very, very annoying pop song. So let's try it now. Can you write a very annoying and childish pop song about, what could it be about? Robots. I love robots. They're so cool. They've got arms and legs and tools. Okay. They beep and boop and make me smile. They do stuff in just a while. I mean, I did ask it to write an annoying song. That is, I can imagine that'd be quite annoying. Now, again, at the start of the course, I said, I'd never use ChatGPT to write an actual book or the actual prose of a story, because I think that kind of has to come from the heart. It comes from the person. But sometimes doing things like this gives you a little bit of inspiration. Now, you could use that if you needed the whole lyrics to a song, or you could use it as inspiration. It's kind of up to you how far you take it. But when I had to write this song for the story that these kids are singing, I mean, I'm terrible at writing songs. I could never do it, and I'm even worse at poetry. So this actually kind of gave me a little bit of assistance. And then I took the text that I got from ChatGPT and I changed it a bit, and I spent a bit of time playing around with it. But it gave me that kind of initial kernel of an idea that I could play around with. So in the next example, we're going to look at how we can use ChatGPT as a way of effectively being an editor. So we're going to give it an example that's quite complex, like a complex or an overly complex set of sentences, and we're going to ask ChatGPT to try and simplify it for us. In this next example, I have a pre-written set of sentences which, quite frankly, are dreadful. They're overly complex, overly wordy, and not very good. Now, what we can do is we can use ChatGPT in some cases to help us simplify some phrases that we've written. Because sometimes when you're working on your, say, second revisions of your book, for example, sometimes it can be you can have a bit of a mental block when it comes to trying to simplify your own work. Now, there are tools like Grammarly and Pro-Writing Aid out there which also help, but ChatGPT is also a very capable tool. So let's say, can you simplify the following text in quotes, so it knows that's what I want simplified. So I want it to simplify is the following. This is a rather complex sentence. It could really do with being simplified, although I'm not sure how to do it, as I really want to use this as an example, but I can't think of anything else. I wonder if ChatGPT can help me out, as it is really rather complex and not easy to read. I think any reader reading this would be put off by my book. So that's a pretty horrible piece of prose, isn't it? So let's see what ChatGPT can do with that. So this is what it's come up with. This sentence is complicated and needs to be simpler. I want to use it as an example, but I don't know how to simplify it. Can ChatGPT help me? It's not easy to read, and readers might not like my book. So actually, it's done a pretty good job there. It's taken what was a confusing sentence, not much punctuation, and just generally quite awful, and it has created a simpler version of that. So it's actually worked out quite well. It's not perfect. That first sentence there. This sentence is complicated and needs to be simpler. So we could say instead, this sentence is complicated and needs to be simplified. Would probably sound better. But it's actually done a large part of the work for you there, and it actually sounds pretty good. So if you're struggling with editing and revision, then why not throw some of the text into ChatGPT and see what it can do to help you refine and revise some of your work. In the final section of this course, I want to ask ChatGPT to help me with some outlines of a story. So let's take a look. I've been using the same chat session all throughout this course, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a new chat. Now, when you're coming up with story ideas or an outline for a story, sometimes it's nice to actually sit down with other writers and throw ideas around and kind of chew the fat with other writers, but that's not always possible to do. So ChatGPT is actually pretty good at coming up with rough outlines for stories, which you may or may not use in the form that they come out of ChatGPT, but it's all about stimulating creative ideas. So just to give you an example, we're just going to throw around some simple ideas, see what it comes with. Now, I have no idea what it's going to come back with, so we're just going to play around with it, see what it suggests, and maybe ask it to refine some ideas, which you can then, copy that text out into another document. You can use some of the advice that ChatGPT comes up with. You can combine ideas, or it may actually sort of stimulate your brain to think up alternative ideas which are better. Now again, we're not using ChatGPT to write the actual story. I still think that has to come from the writer, the old-fashioned way, bum in seat, fingers on keyboard. But using an AI to help brainstorm and develop ideas is actually really useful, and I think that's fine. I think there's nothing wrong with that. So here's our prompt. Can you come up with an example outline for an alien invasion story? Let's see what it comes up with. Okay, so as far as outlines go, I mean, that's pretty generic, isn't it? So it's an introduction where we have the inciting incident, the invasion begins, resistance and survival, discovering the aliens' weaknesses, a final battle, and an epilogue. Now, you're not necessarily going to write an award-winning story just from that, but it's a start. So if you were wondering about how you might structure an alien invasion story, that's not bad. There's some good bits there. So let's zero in on just a few bits and let's just see how we can narrow this down. So the aliens show their power. The invasion begins and the aliens show their power. So can you suggest some examples how the aliens show their power? So a massive alien spaceship appears in the sky, dwarfing all human aircraft and technology. Aliens use advanced energy weapons that effortlessly destroy military bases and cities. Reminds me of Independence Day, though. The film, that is. Aliens demonstrate their superior technology by hacking into and taking control of human computer systems. Yeah, that sounds good. Aliens use their psychic abilities to influence and control human minds. Oh yeah, we're getting body snatcher vibes from that. The aliens reveal themselves to be much stronger, faster, and more durable than humans by easily overpowering any resistance fighters who stand in their way. Aliens show their ability to terraform or manipulate the environment, causing massive earthquakes, storms, and natural disasters. That's kind of interesting. So getting an alien invasion story and then kind of merging it with a typical disaster story scenario. That could be fun. The aliens deploy robots or drones that are much more advanced than any human technology, easily gathering intelligence and carrying out targeted attacks. That's pretty cool. And aliens demonstrate their ability to manipulate time or space using teleportation or other advanced technology to travel instantaneously between locations. There's some quite interesting ideas there. Now you could narrow down into each of them further. So you could say, give me examples of alien energy weapons and things like that. We're not going to do that now, but that's an exercise you could do yourself. So let's pick another area. So humanity's attempts to fight back. So that sounds cool. We like a good battle. So can you suggest examples of humanity's attempt to fight back? So military resistance. So the military launches a full-scale attack on alien invaders using all available weapons and technology. You could just imagine the movie for that now. Yeah, lots of CGI. Guerrilla warfare. A group of resistance fighters uses hit-and-run tactics to disrupt the aliens' operations and infrastructures. That could be quite cool. So you could have a more kind of intimate small band of guerrilla fighters going in to try and disable the aliens. Cyber warfare, biological warfare, diplomacy. So human leaders attempt to negotiate a peaceful resolution. You could have that going on whilst you have a guerrilla team going in. It could be a nice interplay between trying to collaborate or negotiate and attack. That could be good. Espionage. Human spies attempt to infiltrate the aliens' ranks and gather intelligence. That's pretty cool. Psychological warfare. So humans attempt to use propaganda, misinformation, or other tactics to undermine the aliens' morale and cause them to turn on each other. That's pretty interesting. Or summoning help. So humans try to reach out to other civilizations or beings, either from Earth or beyond. I kind of imagine that in a kind of a Star Trek scenario, couldn't you? So we have an alien invasion coming to Earth and then we call on the Vulcans to come and help, or maybe the Klingons. That'd be quite cool. In just 3 queries so far, we've asked it for a very simple outline, which admittedly was quite generic, but it's given us some food for thought. Then just in a couple of areas, we've narrowed down. So we've asked it, how might the aliens attack? Some quite nice ideas there. You could drill down further, or that may have already stimulated your imagination to come up with other scenarios. And we've asked it for some, examples